baseball lifestyle. It's my lifestyle.
Sick.
He's forcing his way out. He wants to come home.
Bring him home.
But like I didn't see the tweet or anything that he did. What did he actually say?
When Bleacher Report posted that like Soto denied the deal, he like commented and tagged Soto. It was like, "Hey, we'd love to have you," or something like that. But then that's why I was just like, "All right, he's a huge Mets fan and he's like a sports guy. Just go fucking."
So I watched like 6 hours of us yesterday trying to find when we
So did
said.
I, yes.
I couldn't find it. I don't know what episode it was.
I messaged him about it. It had to be semi-recently because we were talking about Bryce Harper.
Yep.
And then, like, that we didn't pay him, so they're definitely not going to pay Soto. I just don't remember when that was.
Neither do I.
I watched, like, the trade deadline stuff. Not the trade deadline, like the free agency ones. Like,
I can almost guarantee a fan, like, knows exactly which episode it is, what moment.
I think it was when we were talking about him being, like, as good as Barry Bonds. But I can't remember what episode that was. When we were talking about how Barry
deserves
hit
in the Hall of Fame. Did you watch that one?
No.
That's probably guaranteed. That's the one. I totally forgot that we like did that comp.
Because we talked about him, and I said that he's my MVP selection for next year. I'm like, I already know who I want to choose.
Well, for this episode, because we're obviously going to talk about it, we need to be very demonstrative and early in the podcast that he is going to get $500 million.
Well, guess what? The podcast already started, so it's already in.
Ha ha ha! Welcome back to the Ground Crew, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Josh Gerson, along with my co-host,
Bill Ron, what up?
Welcome back. Before we get started, as always, make sure you like, subscribe, toss us a review, share it to somebody, all that good stuff. Interesting week in baseball. We never can have good news. Why can't we ever have good news, Bill? Pitchers and catchers were supposed to report on February the 15th. That didn't happen because we're still in a lockout. And MLB's coming out with all these interesting news things. So I'm just going to start from the top because this kind of happened at the end of last week. They're also meeting today, by the way, which I know we were talking about in previous episodes that they're like low-key meeting and not telling people. I don't think that's the case. Based on the fact that like all the reporters pretty much just like follow around all the executives, I think they're only meeting like once a week. And that's troubling, at least for me. I feel like this is something that they should just be working on nonstop.
I struggle to understand how they're communicating.
Yeah.
And it seems that it's as broken as we've said, right? Like, and the shame of it is that it just doesn't look like they're going to do anything good together, which is my point of everybody's just got to blow this thing up.
Yeah.
Like, just acknowledge that what you have is broken and move on. And then you start hearing the rumors of things that are happening, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stuff that's happening with minor leagues that's being proposed by the MLB.
Yeah, and it's ugly. I guess there's, in my opinion, I don't like it.
Okay, so what do you not like about it?
Just like seeing all the different stories about minor leaguers and their pay.
Yep.
Them not getting paid at all during spring training is ridiculous. And then I saw I don't know if you saw this guy's thread. I forget his name. I'll pull his name up on Twitter just so I can give him a little shout out.
And just so everybody knows, like the MLB argued and paid a lawyer $750 an hour to argue that minor league baseball players should be considered trainees like a 14-year-old learning how to flip burgers at McDonald's and not as professional athletes. And it's like, you have minor leaguers who have been held down by a broken system who you're not going to pay. So we have a distortion of the fact that if I have a 23-year-old superstar who is on the cusp of coming up, again, we'll use guys who we've talked about before, Spencer Torkelson, right? Like, that guy's not going to get paid, right? Bobby Wood Jr., not going to get paid. These are guys who everybody expects to be in the MLB coming up.
Yep.
Well, but here's the other side that's the downside is the PA has no reason to help these guys because they're not part of the PA for a lot of them. Now, those few guys I just mentioned are on 40-man roster, so now they're part of the MLB Players Association. But they're not going to make a good deal for these young kids.
No.
And this is why minor league guys need to have their own union.
Yeah.
Because they're not being taken care of.
Even remotely.
And there's just such a chasm between the guys who are making the rules, the owners who are making the rules. Like, I'll put this in perspective, because I think it's as close as I can make it. Right. The difference between an owner of a team and the best player in the league is a smaller gap financially than the best player in the league and the worst player in the league, salary-wise.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you've got guys who are making, like Scherzer, who's now negotiating for the PA. He's on that side of everything. Is making $43 million a year. He's going to have made in his career close to $500 million. You have some owners in the league whose total net worth is $1.2 billion. He's half that in career earnings, right? So now we're talking about a guy who's half. You have guys in the league making $500K. That's not half of $500 million that Scherzer has made, right?
Yep.
So the chasm, he's negotiating, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, that's normal, that's fine." Mm-hmm. But Scherzer has no connection to those bottom end guys.
No, none.
And he looks at them and goes, "Guys, you don't even matter." This is what an owner thinks. So the best players in the league negotiate worse for the guys at the bottom than the owners against themselves. Mm-hmm. It's all broken because you have too wide of a chasm between everybody. And, like, that's the problem, is the guy who's the peak of it is not paying attention to things that are important to the guy at the bottom. And an owner is trying to do it for all of these people. And the guy at the top is like, "Yeah, but that's not good enough for me." I said, "Yeah, but what about your teammate who's a 28-year-old guy who has only been up for 2 years and is scratching and clawing and making $690K?"
Yep. He's on the verge of going back to the minors half the time, and also has and is under team control for the next 6 years
Until he's 35.
Yeah.
What are you have no connection to that guy. You don't look at him, and you're not negotiating for him either. So you have all of the minor league guys, and then most of the guys at the back end of rosters who are not being negotiated for in what this rule is.
Yep.
By former players and for current players and for people whose objective is to work for the guys who are the top guys.
Yeah.
So we have a has and has nots whole thing on everybody's side. We have the rich owners worth $10 billion versus the poor owners worth a few $100 million. Mm-hmm. And then you have the top players, right, worth $500 million versus the bottom players getting paid $70,000 a year in the minors.
Right.
And then lower than that.
And then on top of all that, they're also suggesting that they just want to cut minor league jobs in general, on top of all the other pay cuts and things that they want to do.
Well, so you and I have had that talk before.
Right. So that was the other point of, I don't entirely hate that, from an understanding that we do want to thin out the amount of players and get just some of the highest quality stuff.
Yep.
But on the other side of the guys who do make it to spring training, especially like big league spring training, I was reading this guy's name is Jack Kruger. This guy I was talking about before. As a minor leaguer, he made $480 every 2 weeks. He was in big league spring training every year that he was in the minors so far. He's been in there 7 seasons. Got there in 2016. He makes $1,500 a week in spring training, and then in season $480 every 2 weeks. So that's why he's like, I need this because that's where I'm making the most money out of all my season. Yeah. So he was weighing in on that and just like, guys, like this is just going to ruin so many people. He was living in a 6-person apartment in 2 bedrooms, like, you know, all the minor league horror stories that we hear about. And I think once, on top of all the other issues and things that are not being accomplished, them putting this out there to layer onto that, we already know that the minor leagues are a problem, is souring everybody.
And like, to me, like they just proposed that they're going to pay for guys' housing in season.
Right.
So like the reality is what to me I actually think that what the owners are doing for the grant for overall is for the betterment of what the minors will be. I don't see any worlds where any player that has a contract with MLB. So like if I'm a trainee, I can go into any team. As soon as you have me on a contract that I can't go to any team, I'm not a trainee, I'm your employee.
Right.
So if I'm your employee, you have to pay me.
Yeah.
Because you're requiring me to come here for this training.
Well, I guess, I mean, I don't know the actual, like, structure of how their contracts work, but I have to imagine that it's, hey, you report to spring training, it's unpaid, but it's like part of your lead up to when you do get paid in season.
that can't be a thing.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
But that can't be a thing. Like, when you start a job, you come in for training at McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
McDonald's pays you to come in for training.
Right.
So why would McDonald's pay a trainee, but the MLB wouldn't?
That is a great question.
So again, guys, this doesn't make any sense. Like, that's a dumb thing to do. I don't know why they're even fighting for it. Because I think the real that they need to do is the minor should be even smaller. And I thought we had done enough last year, but we didn't. It still appears that there's all these like extended spring training situations and, you know, all these other teams. Like, the Mets still had multiple like things, right? Yeah, you thinned it out a little bit, but there's still roughly 4 levels. And I think there should be less. Let these guys go to independent ball. Like, go make more money. Because the reality is, we talk about it, you go to the independent league, you go to the Ducks in the Atlantic League. The Ducks are paying guys $3K a month, right?
Yeah.
If you're making $3K a month to play for the Ducks, that's better than what you were making $448 every 2 weeks. Why wouldn't I go to that level and do that?
It's a great question. That's, to me, that seems like the easiest way to eliminate at least like rookie ball.
Yes.
Like, those guys go to Florida or whatever, and they're kind of just BSing and playing like essentially like scrimmages.
Well, I think if you're under the age of 20 and you get drafted, I'm fine with you going to an instructional component to what this is.
Right.
So being in, for the Mets example, just because I know their affiliates better, you go to St. Lucie where they have their primary spring training facility, and that's where their minor league guys are going to be and going to practice and do everything. So if you're a younger guy and you're there and you're competing with the other younger guys, you're occasionally doing some scrimmage stuff with other teams, and you're just getting instruction, you're lifting weights, you're trying to better yourself. Great. But hard, like, minor league system, like high A, double A, like A, double, triple, done. Some of this, like, in-between stuff just doesn't make sense. And then how many guys you're allowed to have in instructs should just shrink.
Yeah.
But nobody really wants that, because the reality is they want more players that they can develop for the future. Well, you and I in past episodes have said all the GMs and all the talent evaluators in the MLB suck. Because you guys have 150 people in your minor leagues, and you, like, 10 of them you're going to end up having at the MLB level. Like, if I took a snapshot of the Mets' whole affiliate like system today, 10 of those guys at max will ever have a cup of coffee.
You know what's interesting too, and I think it's something that the PA is arguing about, is being able to bring players up and down. Big problem. Apparently, not apparently, it's unlimited right now for how many times you can bring players up and down. And like, I was reading about this yesterday. Like, you can bring a guy up, right? And for example, let's say Tyler McGill, when he was first getting brought up, right? He could come up, make a start, and go back down, and that only counts as 1 day of service time. And they can just mess with that and do all that stuff. And then you get guys who kind of have that little bit, like a cup of coffee or whatever, couple days, and then they're kind of sucked back into the minor league thing and never really see the free agency or kind of any of this stuff. And like, they're back into their weird little like minor league deal, and it's kind of just this little like cycle, and you only get like the 1 or 2 guys that you're talking about that really kind of make it through and get to push their needle of like their career.
And that's why I look at it and I say that the MLB's fighting a dumb battle in that sense. But then I also read an article that somebody put up the other day talking about the guys who are in between. And this goes back to, and I would probably want to call Sean and see if maybe he was stuck in that limbo. Sean's deal was going to make it that he had signed early enough. But if you have a guy who was a free agent, so the Mets traded for Trevor or something last year. We got him in that trade. He was an older reliever, like 26, and we had traded for him midseason. So I forget exactly what his name was. But the Mets traded for a guy. He pitched for us out of the bullpen. He doesn't have a deal right now. But because he had an MLB deal last year, he's not allowed to talk to teams because of the lockout.
Oh, damn.
But he's looking for a minor league deal.
Right.
So he can't get a job.
Oh, that's so annoying.
So he can't play minor leagues, even though he's going to sign a minor league deal.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was an MLB guy, but he doesn't have enough stuff to get paid by the PA. So the PA right now is paying the players.
Oh yeah?
They're giving the players some money.
Okay.
So the players are earning some money from the Players Association that they kind of collected as their dues.
Gotcha.
Right? And now they're feeding that money back slowly to all of the players in a relative balance so that guys have funds to kind of live life.
Right.
Right? He doesn't fall in that.
Because he didn't have enough service time?
Whole deal.
Wow.
So he's stuck in limbo where the PA can't pay him.
You talking about Robert Stock?
No.
Trevor Williams.
I think
Trevor Williams. Okay.
See, I was right with Trevor.
Okay.
He got paid. He has not made enough money, hasn't done enough things. He's stuck in a limbo, and the PA can't help him, and he can't play minors and make money. Even though he's going to be a guy who's going to sign a minor league deal. Wild.
That's super weird.
That's
that's so crazy.
That's how broken the system is.
It is super.
And guys,
yeah.
Understand. You guys are trying to keep a half sunk ship alive. It's eventually going down.
Yeah.
Just sink it and rebuild a ship.
The way they've kind of structured this whole thing so that they have the max control and it's all interwoven and all this stuff is now coming to light of the fact that it is completely constructed poorly.
Yeah. So this is the only way to force the owners to do it would be to go to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Right? Because the Supreme Court could go and say that there's antitrust rules that are at play here.
Well, isn't the MLB the only one that's exempt from that?
But we could run this back again. And that was the
Isn't
minor
that the-
league, but that's the minor league guys. I'm not even saying the minor league guys. I
Okay.
actually think the MLB is kind of bordering on the function of, do they have antitrust with what they're doing? They've organized in good faith that they have an uncapped league, but then they have a luxury tax that limits the ability for anybody to go there.
Right.
So now players can't earn maximums, but there's no minimums that the teams have to spend.
Mm-hmm.
So inherently the owners have manipulated the market to make it that there's not enough money in the system.
Right.
We talked about that again last episode or the episode before that. If every team in the league had to spend $90 million, would that be more or less than they spent last year? Deets, can you pull up what total salaries were last year?
Yep.
I think we talked about this in the last episode. I think it was 10 teams or something would need to spend more money.
We said 10 teams would have to spend more money, but my question is, if we said, okay, every team in the league spends $90 million versus whatever they spent last year, separate from luxury tax.
So we're saying
So
90 million plus?
Yes.
It's a lot of teams. League average for 26-man payroll.
No, just what was the gross salaries?
For the teams that spent less than 90?
No, I want to know gross salaries last year. Just how much did owners spend last year?
Total payroll.
Total payroll. There
Gotcha.
we go.
There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams that were under 90 last year. One of them,
No, what was gross salaries? I don't need any of those numbers. I need gross salaries last year for all the teams.
I would have to add up 30 numbers then. It's going to take a while.
Just copy it into a spreadsheet. Go gadget. Because if we did $90 million times 30 teams, right, we're talking about $2.7 billion?
In full for the league?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're talking $2.7 billion would be the number. So what was actually spent last year? Right?
Well, 400 of that's in the top 2, right? Roughly?
Not counting their luxury tax. If you take away their luxury
Okay.
tax. So the luxury tax is my point. That's not actually salaries. That's just that's all of the money that then gets put in. So they did $4 billion last year was total spend. Right? So $4 billion. So if I just put a 90, we're at 2.7.
Right.
And there's how many teams that were above 200,
That's 250.
right? So we look at it and we say that there are 5 teams that are over 200,
Right.
right? So just those teams are $1 billion by themselves.
Yep.
So if you made a salary floor of 90, there'd be more money for all the players. Everything changes.
Do you think it's hard for the the Orioles to get up to maintain that as a small market
I don't
team?
care.
Well, so
I don't think that
that's a perfect segue. Hold
I
on,
don't
hold on.
think that the Baltimore Orioles are a small market.
I don't think so either. Actually,
How do the Baltimore Ravens function?
for sure. So my thought is, and this was the more people I think are starting to propose this. Sell your team if you can't
Facts.
handle it.
We've said this
We've said it
before.
before, yeah.
Well, we're making concessions for poor owners. And we're allowing people to do it because there's so much history in the game of baseball that everybody's afraid of taking teams away from people
Yep.
when they're not running it optimally. Could you imagine any team in the NFL operating as poorly from a financial standpoint as the Baltimore Orioles? Like the Detroit Lions are on the cusp every year of being taken over by the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Every year. Because they're the only team that loses money in the league. Only team. And they're better run and have a higher payroll than everything that you see in the MLB.
Yep.
And the MLB is just terrible. The entire system is dumb. There's no worse professional sports league than the MLB. And I don't want to hear PA and everybody else would hear me say that and be like, that's wrong. That's not true. Guys, show me. You have
Look at what we're looking at right now in terms of your conversations and trying to reorganize the league. It is obviously not doing well.
and you guys can't do it.
Yes.
So the NFL, we talk about all of the playoff games were decided by 3 points.
Yeah.
Except for the best game, which was the Bills-Chiefs. That was 6 points. You want to talk about parity?
Sorry.
It's cool. I'm over it. You want to talk about parity of a league, though?
Yeah.
The Super Bowl, everything, you pretty much, based off of how every game ended up playing out, you could make a case that 8 different teams could have won the Super Bowl this year.
Easily. Absolutely.
I can't say that about baseball. We were talking about the Dodgers all the way through until the Dodgers lost.
Well, actually, hang on. I think, looking at last season,
Sure.
there were actually a lot of teams that you could say were all right, cool, they might have a chance, right?
Sure.
But then the fall off was massive. Whereas the NFL, there was a lot of fringe teams that was all right, cool, if they get in, they could be a scrappy team and get all the way.
The Chargers missed the playoffs.
Yep.
Right? The Chargers missed the playoffs, and people were like, oh, that's a great team. No great team missed the playoffs in baseball.
No.
Because you have just such a stark contrast. The Jets were bad. Sorry.
It's okay.
But, the Jets did more to try to win than the Orioles did last year by leaps and bounds.
Oh, for sure.
No, it's not allowed to function that poorly. You want to go to soccer. Soccer is run better. UFC is run better. Right? The only sport that might have worse management is boxing.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if that's true anymore.
But it's so different.
I don't even know if that's
boxing
true anymore.
boxing is a sport that's just changing so ridiculously. Where it's I would say the mainstream fan, the casual boxing fan, doesn't watch Gervonta Davis fight.
Sure.
They're watching Jake Paul.
Yeah.
They're watching all that crap.
Yeah.
And so it's not. It's definitely the fair weather boxing fan is more the thing than there's not as many new I love boxing, I'm only watching boxing type
Or
thing.
more of a Mayweather boxing fan.
Yes, Dennis, thank you.
But Jake Paul has done more positive for boxing
oh yeah,
in the last 2 years than any boxer in the last 30. The
Yeah.
only boxer I could tell you that has promoted and enhanced the notoriety financials of boxing to the degree he has was Mike Tyson. Now, you could say Mayweather was close, right? But Mayweather dominated so much and picked and chose his way through and was very calculated at all times that he finessed a great career. But, heavyweights rule boxing. And Tyson was heavyweight. Jake Paul comes in, small dude. He's setting up fights that sell.
Yeah.
And he's paying these dudes big money. So he's literally out here, and he talked to Dana White. He's like, Dana, you got guys who are making no money. They've all got full-time jobs, and they fight in the UFC. And, like, that's a league that's going to need some reform at some point in time because there's so much money that's going to the promotion. Not enough is making its way to the fighters.
Yeah. And I think they're close to that, too.
But they're still run better than the MLB. And that's the point. So we have some of the shadiest sports in existence fighting, where it's always had manipulation of everything. And baseball has proven it's worse.
Yeah. And then on top of all of that, all the shady stuff, there's even more.
Yeah.
This week, the trial is commencing for Eric Kay, who was the communications advisor for the Angels, and he was supplying Tyler Skaggs and Matt Harvey and others with prescription pills and things during 2019, and one of them led to Tyler Skaggs' death in July of 2019. And Matt Harvey was on the stand this week to give his testimony, and he was telling his side of the story in that he was giving pills to Skaggs, he was taking pills, he was doing different drugs, cocaine, things like that, when he was on the Mets, when he was in L.A., and there's been a lot of different responses to it. I know one thing that Terry Collins did an interview after.
I saw it.
Yeah, and a lot of people were upset about it. In the interview, he was talking about his closed-door conversations with Matt Harvey about his mental state, about what he was doing off the field, and he talked about Matt Harvey's depression and that he considered suicide and things like that. Super, like, heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And people were upset that he was coming out publicly and saying that.
I struggle to have someone else talk about somebody else's mental health. However, if we want to if we want to take away the stigma of mental health, then we have to talk about it the same way we would talk about somebody's drug problem or this or that, right?
Yep.
People can talk about, hey, you know what? Like, I saw him using drugs. I saw him having issues, and I wanted to get him help, but I wasn't able to, and I wish them the best, right? And nobody bats an eye at that, right?
Yep.
Me saying I, saw that he was struggling with depression and thoughts of suicide and things like that, and I wanted to help him and I couldn't. And we make it that, you should never have said that. Guys, it's the same thing. If you want to take away that it's power to be a negative, you have to make it that it's okay for people to talk about it and how they wanted to help you.
Yep.
I didn't love how Terry came across with it, but it's also a young guy died because he was being fed pills. And Matt Harvey had a precipitous drop-off of his career that now looks like it was very heavily because of drugs and partying. Right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the public kickback was absolutely his delivery of it. I agree. I think to remove the stigma, you have to have conversation about it. Period.
Got to be able to talk about it.
But I think the conversation was like, obviously or more than likely he was not alone when all of this was happening, and I know I was seeing some reports and stuff that the Mets did try to help him, at least to some degree, but also, like, where were your teammates? What was going on with all that, and why wasn't more of an effort made? I think was the question out there.
So why wasn't more of an effort made for Lawrence Taylor?
I don't know.
Why was more of an effort not made by the '86 Mets?
Because they were winning.
Why?
Sure.
Why wasn't more of an effort made by Hamilton's teammates in Texas?
Mm-hmm.
Where were all they? Why didn't they do something about it? That's bullshit, right? I can't walk around with a man his entire life holding his hand and treating him like a child.
Sure.
So you can tell me that a guy has problems, but nobody can sit here and be like, it was the job of his entire teammates and everybody else to make sure he didn't do shit and fuck himself up.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
That's out.
Yeah.
Right? So anybody criticizing Mets teammates, Mets organization, things like that, like, at what point in time is it our responsibility? Now, this does bring up that Matt Harvey never failed a drug test.
Well, so that was the other thing,
So
too.
this goes back to the PA and the MLB being cool with guys taking drugs all the time, just not steroids. But you can take steroids if you have low testosterone and you take testosterone replacement therapy, which is steroids. But we call it something different so that it's not given a stigma. So there's just so much across the whole thing that's just broken. People can talk about that. All of pro sports have pill issues. America has a pill issue.
Mm-hmm.
My father had cancer years ago. And my father, every single month, was getting like 100 to 150 large Vicodin pills. He was getting another 40 to 75 Percocets. He had some kind of surgery. He had access to liquid morphine. Guys, you want me to start up a drug cartel? I could have done it, right? Start selling all this perks and Vicodin and stuff like that to people. It's the same thing. Doctors in America overprescribe. Doctors in sports overprescribe painkillers. You're giving them to large humans, and it is a narcotic. They then get hooked to it. They then can't get off it. And it's all a function of the fact that we want a guy to show up and play. Arm pain, this, that, everything else. Get out there on the field and do your damn job. We don't care about athletes. And this is the problem. Sports in general, American pro sports in general, is broken across the board. It's now becoming more and more that the worst of it is baseball. How are you guys going to fix it? Sink the ship and build a new one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was definitely a big question, was why there isn't more conversation about drugs in the league, and it is definitely a lot to do with like how the PA negotiated drug testing for anything other than steroids. It's very infrequent. Because
the MLB Players Association has gotten a win that these guys can go and just live life, and these guys are. This is the Jacob deGrom thing, right? Jacob deGrom doesn't post on social media, doesn't go to things, He's one of the best players in the game, and he's hidden from view.
Mm-hmm.
He shows up, he makes his money, he does his job. He's not a public figure. He doesn't do anything for it.
Yep.
So he wants to just live a great life. So that guy doesn't care. He's like, if I wanted to smoke weed, I want to be able to and not have a problem.
Yep.
So the PA negotiated all these things for lifestyle aspects. Mm-hmm. But now players don't get paid. Other people are taking advantage of everything else so that a couple of guys can smoke weed. And go to the NFL, can't do that. Other drugs are tested for. There's programs. There's programs where if you're in that program, you can't even drink alcohol. They try to help these guys get off of it. Mm-hmm. MLB is showing that and the PA is showing that they just don't care. Y'all can do whatever you want. You're grown-ass men. Do your thing. And it's just, it's broken.
So what, is there like a common ground you'd prefer? Because we've talked about it, like the use of cannabis and stuff.
It shouldn't be a negotiation tactic.
Right. Like for this
testing
test
for
all the
all
time.
that stuff. Testing for all that stuff should not even that shouldn't be something that anybody has to give up something for.
Okay.
But the fact that we're using it as a bargaining chip is the problem, because it then leads to abuse.
Right.
Because now there's the good and the bad of it. The league itself doesn't help guys with addiction problems per se. Mm-hmm. Well, because we don't test for it, so nobody fails.
Right.
Because nobody fails, we don't know who has a problem. Because we don't know who has a problem, nobody gets treatment.
Right.
NFL, we have a problem with some stuff. We don't want guys to have addictions. We don't want guys, but guys end up losing games and getting suspensions.
Right.
Right?
Josh Gordon.
And then we're upset that these guys have these problems and other guys have issues coming in the league and they have to get drug tests and they have to do stuff.
Right.
But you know what? Problems, less.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
We just need to help people more. This should be a partnership. Perfect. Let's unlock this as a baseball lifestyle thing.
Sure.
If either of you two started to show signs of a serious problem, do you think it would go unseen by me?
Doubtful.
When I start seeing even remote things going on with your guys' demeanor, do I over ask?
Yeah.
How are you doing? What's going on? You seem a little off. You have this issue going on. Now, you might hide that you have something going on, right?
Sure.
You might overindulge in some things. If I even suspect it, I give little hints. I talk about stuff. I say, hey, got to take care of your health, body, things like that. But if I got to the point that I knew that there was a problem, do you think that I wouldn't help? No. Would there be new things in play to try and help?
Sure,
have I talked
absolutely.
very openly about mental health in the company and how people need stuff?
That's one of the things I love about this company. We talk about it constantly.
So this is how business should be. If people that you work with, not people who work for you, I work with you guys. If people you work with are struggling with stuff, and part of it is based off of the pressures that you put on them, assist in helping that.
Yeah.
Assist in helping that, whatever way you can. So owners who own a pro sports league act like it's a favor they're doing for guys that they're even able to play this game. Oh, well, I play a game for a living. I'm the luckiest person in the world. No! Let's chuck that. That was a great thing to say in the 1960s and 70s when guys actually, some of them still had other jobs. Now, to be an MLB player, you sacrifice your life, your entire life. 12-year-old kids are sacrificing weekends in life to go and throw baseballs.
Yeah.
And train and work and do stuff. They say no to opportunities that other kids can do because of it. You go to college, you can't get paid to do anything related to what you do for years.
Mm-hmm.
But if I went on a full academic scholarship, I could write the next Harry Potter book and I could get paid billions. And my school would say, oh, look at you. And I would still be getting a free scholarship. But a player can't do anything related to their success in what they do. They sacrifice everything to entertain us.
Yeah.
And Tyler Skaggs pays a price.
Yep.
Because we want to be able to put our head in the sand and act like it wasn't our fault.
Yeah.
And it's our fault. I said on the last episode, MLB is going to change this. Fans need to revolt that they're not doing the right thing.
Yeah. I think that was at least something that I've noticed from an owner's and Rob Manfred's perspective is that they definitely look at it as more of the business and it's not people. It's not these players play for my team and I need to take care of them and help and use our connection and our partnership to grow the game, grow everyone's lives, and they're people. It's definitely being looked at a very different way, and I think that's where all of these problems, or at least to some degree, how they where they stem from, is that it's not looked. It's the employee-employer relationship is vast. There's a chasm.
Oh, it's an owner and property.
Yeah.
It's an owner and property.
Who in the NFL was talking about that? The slave owner mentality.
Well, yeah, but even owners in the NFL aren't actually. Owners in the NBA are not called owners.
Okay.
They're called chairman, or something like that.
Gotcha.
They're not given the same title, and
I think it was the Texans.
why am I blanking on his name? My favorite guy in the entire world.
Mark Cuban.
Mark Cuban. Thank you. You knew where I was going. Mark Cuban had done an interview about that for that point.
Mm-hmm.
But Mark Cuban also is the perfect example of what's going on. And for anybody out there, you guys can go and find the video or look for the video, and our team maybe can put the video on the screen. So, Delonte West?
Yeah.
was a player in the NBA for years, played
Right.
and played with LeBron in Cleveland, won a championship in Dallas, all this stuff. He had horrible mental health issues, ended up on the street.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody, I guess, saw it and finally tweeted at Mark Cuban, like, how are you going to let your boy fall this far off? And then, like, within hours of Mark Cuban finding out about all this stuff and shows up where he is in his car, picks him up, gets him help, gets him mental help, and starts working towards it. And is actively talked about, like, hey, that's the owner. This guy's worth more money than almost every owner in MLB. And he's out here, like, driving in his own car to go pick up a former player who is having mental health issues. And people wonder why NBA is a better league. Like, you think that it's because of X or what? No, it's because that right there.
Yeah.
You got owners like that. People want to say whatever they want to say about a guy like James Dolan with the Knicks.
Mm-hmm.
James Dolan, all he does is spend the most money in the league every year on everything. Puts everything and invests everything he can in.
Mm-hmm.
He does everything, best arenas, best stuff, best marketing opportunities, pays players, best trainers, best travel, best amenities, all the best stuff for these. You're mad because he's just not super personable. Right? But like that's our biggest issue. You go to the MLB, and you got owners who are literally like, shut up and play. I don't want to pay you for this. I don't want to pay you for that.
Yeah.
Don't do this. Don't do that. The worst situations you could possibly have. Like,
well, you think about team and using the NFL as a perfect example. The teams who have owners that truly care about the team have some of the best culture, the best fans, and at least the majority of the time have at least a decent product on the field.
Yep.
You look at like the Cowboys. Their culture from top to bottom is we want the team to win. The fans love the team. Like when Steve Cohen joined the Mets, all of a sudden the culture was different. You could feel it. You could see obviously spending a ton of money. The fans are excited. Like all that is intertwined. The players, I'm sure, are excited when he's bringing in this guy or that guy or whatever. Yep. And it all connects. And right now, like you're talking about owners who don't do that, who don't spend the money, and you can see it in the fandom and how the product on the field, the effort by the players, like it's not what you want. It's not the level that I think we can be at.
the question is, will it ever?
That is the big question.
And I honestly think we need ownership change in the MLB. There are people who own teams who bought them at a time where it was cheaper to buy a team, and that team is worth well more if it were to sell, but the person doesn't want to sell because they enjoy the fact that they own a team, and it's like, oh, well, they should be able to own their team and do whatever it is and get everything else, and okay, that's fine. But you're now you're now manipulating all of these other people's lives for your own selfish thing, and you're doing it in a way that abuses power at multiple levels. Because what do you think the minor leagues are like for an athletics player? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We all saw the movie, right? Like everybody's seen Brad Pitt get out there, except for Dennis, who doesn't watch movies. Like, and the fact that they had to pay for their own food in the vending machines and stuff like that. That was the MLB team. What do you think their low A team was looking like?
Yeah.
You were coming out and the players were having to rake the field and do all the work themselves. Like, this is where you're getting those boxes and you're getting 2 pieces of white bread with 2 pieces of turkey and 1 slice of cheese with some lettuce, and that was your lunch.
Yeah.
Like, and this is feeding you, a professional athlete. Like, owners, admit it then. Most of your minor league players you don't care about. And if that's the truth, cool. Then shrink down to a high-level team and a low-level team. That's it.
Yeah. I think there's, with at least current ownership or how they should look at it as being an owner of professional sports teams in general, I don't think it shouldn't just be, okay, great, you bought the team, run it how you'd like. There has to be at least some type of parameters or things that they need to do that are like, hey, we understand like you have to run a business, but also you have to push your team forward. You have to push the league forward. If you're not doing a good job, you have to sell the team. It should be a privilege that you have to maintain.
Theoretically, if every owner in the league, right, wanted to bring up and only play, right, not ever sign another guy to a big contract, and only play minor league guys who they bring up, we could get to a world 6 years from now where the highest budget in the league is $25 million.
Oh, yeah.
So you have a league that would allow it to dissolve itself to that degree. That also at the same time has a ceiling of $240 million. And it's why it's broken. Listen, if I had my full way, my full way, the MLB would run more like soccer in European soccer.
Right, like relegating and things like that.
Relegation should be in play because then everything changes. Because what if for real, right? What if the Long Island Ducks went out and were willing to sign somebody for bigger money, and then they could beat the Orioles?
Yeah.
Come on up. Orioles, go on down. Relegation should be in play for baseball especially because the quality of the product at scale is not good enough. But you have these people are in the same league.
Yeah.
Relegation. Halfway through the season, you're relegated. You're down. See ya. Right?
Yeah.
And just let those people walk away. Now you're going to have the best, like all the teams who make the playoffs, like those teams stay. Everybody else who's kind of from that to 20, right? You stay up. Everybody else you're relegated to a smaller league. And you know what you're also going to have to play against? You're going to have to play against some of those AAA teams.
Yeah, and that's the other
Because
side of the league.
what if an organization has a great AAA like what if they have a great high advanced program, right? Because so if we just went to low and advanced,
It's the other half of the 40 man.
could you imagine if an owner had two teams in the top league?
That's legit.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so what does that allow us to do? That'll allow Stephen Cohen to build out the best minor league program possible. Guess what? All these guys just got promoted. You're no longer a minor guy. You guys are all now MLB guys.
Not all the teams own their minor league teams, though. Just,
I know they're partners in it,
Yeah.
Right.
but allow them to be partners in it with that guy. Guess what? That guy you just took a team, and now you are up. If you have 10 years of success, you will always be up. You will not get relegated. But now we relegate the teams that suck. You want to perennially be a terrible team? Relegation. Don't get the share in the national revenue money. Don't get any of that stuff. How fast would guys sell their teams?
Yeah. Well, you look at like the Marlins when they like did their fire sale and they like low key the Marlins like 1 through 8 5 years ago was ridiculously good.
We talked about it. We've said it.
And then they sent them all away, and they're like, cool, we're going to be good in like 10 years. We'll see you then. And they like publicly said that.
Yep.
That's a big problem.
That team should not be in a pro sports league.
No. Like, I went
Let
to
them relegate.
Yeah, like there had to, like we've been to Ducks games in the last year. There were more people at the Ducks game than they were at the Marlins game,
Yep.
and I've been to both last year.
Yep.
That's absurd.
That organization should have to be relegated to some degree. Right? Now, here's the sad thing, is they made the playoffs in 2020 and the Mets did.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Relegation.
Yeah.
This is open for the Mets, too. This is for everybody. Relegation. Now, a billionaire owner, he might be pissed off about relegation. What's he going to do? Go sign players.
Yeah. And listen, if the Mets got relegated in 2019, all of a sudden our $240 million payroll, we're back in business.
but what can you do when you have relegation if you were to run yourself like European soccer? You could then put a player on loan.
So,
You don't have
yes.
to let up their contract. So
Right.
if the Mets got relegated and we had just signed Francisco Lindor, cool, we're going to let you guys keep him. We're in a true uncapped league now. We're gonna loan you guys him. His contract is for X, and you're going to pay a loan fee of X.
Right. He just stayed
So
on the
another team
Indians
is
or whoever.
willing to pay $40 million
Guardians.
a year.
Right.
So now the Mets don't have to pay that money while they're relegated.
Yep.
But once they can get themselves out of relegation, they bring the homie back.
I also don't think it should be a year-to-year thing.
Well, so how relegation works is the top 2 teams from relegation go back up
Right. But is that year-to-year?
every year.
Okay.
Now, you don't mess it when you get relegated, you typically don't make it up that fast again
Right.
because guys have to leave, you lose people, guys don't want to sign with you. So typically, a team that gets relegated, it's going to take them a while to refix things to then get back to that point.
I think that's also the nature of that sport, too. Like soccer. Like you could add 2 guys to the MLB. You could add Max Scherzer and Francisco Lindor and probably make your team at least good enough.
You could add Ronaldo to any team,
Sure.
and they'd become much better.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's the same thing.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying these sports should be run relatively similarly.
But that's also, I feel like I don't think you see Manchester United get relegated. You know what I mean? Like,
would you see the Yankees get relegated?
doubt
So
it.
we have the
Yeah.
same thing already.
Right.
Like we already have a lot of the same structure. The problem is the back end.
Right.
The back end is messing this whole thing up. But like you saw, like basketball is talking about, NBA is talking about when they get to their next CBA. One of the things that they'd like to do is move to a mid-season tournament.
Okay.
That all of the teams compete in a mid-season tournament, and the winner gets automatic placement in the postseason.
That'd be cool.
That way, a team could play for the first half, get seeded high, win that tournament, and then kick rocks the back half of the season.
So the Mets would have been in.
Let guys exactly. Let guys rest. Let guys do everything else, because you're already locked into your spot in the postseason.
Right.
They're going to make a whole bunch of money. So instead of having All-Star break, right, they would do a combination of like a tournament. Maybe they don't have the top teams participated. Maybe they have the bottom teams. All the teams last year who missed the postseason who were lottery teams, which is 14 teams in NBA. Those 14 teams compete in a mid-season tournament to make the playoffs.
Oh, hold on.
So much cool stuff could happen.
Speaking of lottery, sorry, I forgot to put this on there. The PA and MLB agreed on draft lottery. That's
Dope.
one of their points. Yeah, they agreed on that and universal DH. We saw coming, at least that one.
Great progress, but
Yes.
none of that stuff
But
to
that's
me is
it.
real bargaining.
Yes.
You guys didn't actually fundamentally alter how we function. You did one thing that makes competitive play better. You did another thing that stops rewarding the worst team by being the worst team all the time.
Yeah.
You gave lottery odds. The Knicks were the worst team in the league a couple of years ago, and they got the third pick.
Yep.
The Knicks were the second worst team in the league 2 years ago, and they got the 8th pick and drafted Obi Toppin.
Yep.
There should be a world where we force teams to always try to be good, and if they don't, relegation. I'd love it. Could you imagine how awesome sports in like this country period would be if there was relegation? Just get rid
People
of
would
the
try
bad
to
teams.
win all the time.
Get rid of the bad teams.
Yeah.
And
Detroit Lions fans would finally have something to root for.
Facts, like maybe the Detroit Lions get to compete in that lower league and they're better now because you don't have to play against any of the other top teams.
All the bottom teams play in the spring.
No, they could play the same schedule and they
Sure.
could play right alongside everybody else.
Yeah.
But you would have all of the teams, all of the bottom X teams, play each other. That's
Right.
the division, right? Like if you said the worst 8 teams in the NFL, that's your schedule. You pay you play each other twice, 2 games, and then on top of that, to get to 17, you play 3 games against some randomly selected people from the main league. That's what soccer does. Like we're gonna play Manchester United, but we're gonna get tossed, but we're gonna get to play them.
And you're going to make a lot of money off that
A
game.
whole bunch of money by being in that game that day.
Yeah.
Great. The whole fandom shows up, walks in. Let's go. Let's see this. Cool. Now you get that. If your team finishes with the best record in that year, you get out of relegation. You have your own thing. Yeah, you don't get to make the postseason. You're out on the postseason, but you're no longer relegated. Next year, you're in the tournament. You have a chance to be there. But the bottom 8 teams every year, y'all are in relegation the following year. The 2 teams that come up, the 2 teams that come out of it, 2 teams come down.
That would definitely be an interesting structure.
I think that would allow everything to happen.
Then at least
And
the
baseball
teams
can do
that
the
were
same thing.
crap will at least be on the same level playing field, and you don't get like the Yankees just mollywopping the Orioles every
year and then
month.
saying that they're good because you're beating up on bad, terrible teams.
Yeah.
Like you have 17 games against a team that has
Right.
they're not even trying to win.
And it's because at the end of the day, you can't say, oh, like it's hard to beat a good team when you don't spend a lot of money because the Rays have shown that that's not the case.
Yeah, but the Rays still spend enough money.
For sure.
Right?
But that's
and
what I'm saying.
They've
Like,
proven what the line of demarcation is,
Right.
which is why I'm saying $90-ish million should be the lowest that a team can spend.
but if you're spending 25, you don't give a shit.
You don't give.
You
You
can't.
don't give
You
at
can't.
all, and that immediately makes it that your team is a complete waste of everything, and you also throw off competitive balance.
Yes.
Because the Orioles are that bad last year. Should the Red Sox and the Yankees even be in the playoffs? Like you had a free win, but meanwhile other teams play in the NL West. There's no free wins. We're gutting it out all the time for this.
Yep.
But other people get free wins because there's a couple of guys in your division who don't play. That to me is just the problem with the league, and it just continues, and it's a shame. And then you have somebody turning down $350 million over 13 years in Juan Soto.
Yes, he did.
Why do you think Juan did that?
Because Juan Soto's going to get $500 million.
He's going to get $500 million, as said first on this podcast.
Absolutely.
Podcast episode question mark.
If you can figure it out, we will give you a big prize.
If you find what episode we said that he's going to get $500 million,
because we said it on several.
You get a free T-shirt.
we will send you a T-shirt. Dennis will send you whatever you want.
Not whatever you
Just
want.
comment.
Just to clarify.
Whatever you want.
Whatever you want.
Just comment in the section what episode it was and what was the timestamp we said it was. Yes, he's going to get $500 million, but this also to me reeks of I don't want to be a national.
Oh yeah, I mean that's exactly what that is because
Right?
you're about to get the biggest contract.
Yeah.
That in this offseason anyway.
Yeah.
And not only did he rightfully turn it down because he is worth more than that.
He's a $50 million player. Yeah.
Yep. But also it's like I'm not going to do this because I don't want to be here. He wants to be he wants to be a star.
So not only does he want to be a star,
He wants to be a big city star.
he is maneuvering himself to get to a place. Do you think when this lockout ends, do you think he demands a trade?
No.
That would be so spicy.
That would be crazy.
I think, like, at this point in time, he was very publicly at the World Series.
Oh yeah.
He was very much trying to show him out in the world. He was with his agents. He's doing all this stuff to get there. This now comes out. Who do you guys think put this out?
Juan Soto's party.
Got to be Juan Soto's party.
Well, he did. Someone asked him, and he could have just said no comment, but he didn't.
And he said, I just turned down 13 years, $350. So he pretty much just said, I just told them I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
So now publicly everyone knows he doesn't want to be a national.
I mean, well, let me ask you this: Is $350 the most the Nationals could spend on him?
Yes.
Has to be, right?
Because we all agree they're broke, right?
They're broke, and they're saying, okay, cool. This offseason, this is everything we can throw at him.
Because they got rid of Turner, they got rid of Scherzer, they did all of that so that they had enough money to pitch this deal to him because they hoped that $30-something million a year, like the Bryce Harper deal, would be enough. And he's like, guys, I'm better than Bryce ever was.
He's like, that's not even Mike Trout money.
Show me the money. I want at least $40 million a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, my question to you guys would be, do you think it's worth it for a team at this point to trade whatever the haul is going to be to get him now rather than wait the 2 years until he's a free agent and can sign elsewhere? Because the Rangers did this a few years ago, getting Adam Fox for two second-round picks when they were going to get him for free the next year if they wanted to.
We've
worth it.
We've discussed on this show the Mike Trout haul.
Yeah.
But
we actually talked about the Juan Soto haul.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's...
I think the Mets have enough pieces to go and make the move. The biggest question is, if you do the trade, you're going to pretty much sign him to a 10-year, $500 million deal.
Yes.
And pay him $50 million a year.
The Mets have all the replacement parts the Nationals need. They have an
The
outfielder.
Mets have all of the parts any team in the league needs. The
Yeah.
Mets have too many good players, not enough elite players, and they can't hit in the clutch.
I'm talking purely from a prospect standpoint.
Yeah, so prospect away, but they're going to want, if you're going to get Juan Soto, the Mets have to clear space. Because they just signed Kana, right?
Yep.
And he plays the same position as Soto.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think it's this season.
If Soto says I want to
Shock
go,
me, please.
If Soto says I want to go, like him saying 350 was not enough. He has now said to the world, no, that you have to give me more than this. That $350 million will not be enough to secure my services. So you've now ixnayed out how many teams in the league?
25.
So you've pretty much said, so Dodgers, Padres?
I'm going to say Dodgers, Padres, Mets, Yankees, Red Sox?
Okay.
I don't think the Red Sox have the money anymore.
Sure.
Whatever you want. They're a team that could have spent it.
They could have paid Mookie. They didn't.
The Houston Astros? But they've got Alvarez.
Yes, and they
They're
also
gone.
weren't going to pay Correa that.
So now we get spicy. So we say that there's only 5 real teams who have the money and the funds to pull that trigger and do more than 350, right? And I think anybody in the league could find it because the Angels gave Trout that bag, right? The
Yeah.
Phillies gave a bag that size. So I think there are teams that we know that would potentially.
I guess I'm looking at it as like those teams already spent their big chip kind of thing.
And who would just be willing to do everything in their power?
Right.
The Yankees are out.
Yeah, I think the
Because the Yankees can't
Yankees
get
also have to
another-
get Aaron Judge.
The Yankees can't get another outfielder.
Yeah. That would
So
be
they're done.
Yeah.
So that's out of
Unless
the
it's they move on from Aaron Judge and go to Juan Soto.
Which, again, they had their opportunity to get Berrios, who's the most underrated pitcher and only signed for $115 million for 5 years, would have been the second or best pitcher on their staff, and they could have had him for what would have amounted to Aaron Judge. But that's besides the point. That trade was designed by me and would have been amazing. So that brings us back. So that brings us to the Dodgers. Do the Dodgers have the money to do it?
Yeah.
But do they really? They got money tied up in their outfield, don't they?
Not a ton of money. They haven't they didn't pay Seager. They haven't paid Trey Turner yet.
Count?
Not there anymore.
Don't they still have money that they owe for his contract?
It's not like sizable money. Like
Okay.
they're not
I thought
they
they were-
spend a lot of money, but it's not like.
But I
all
thought they were
committed.
still paying a fair amount of money to that contract.
I'm not sure, but in the scheme of like players that get over $30 million a year, I don't think they have many of those.
Okay.
So, like, they could figure something out. The Mets obviously have quite a bit of money tied up in some guys right now, but we also have, if we wanted to, endless money.
Mookie?
Mookie's probably their biggest piece. Yeah. But he's also, right fielder.
But that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
like that to me takes all of that money.
Maybe they
off.
just paid Pollock some more. Maybe.
Yeah, Betts is getting $22.5, but with his luxury tax, it's a $30.5 million deal. Justin Turner makes $20. Trey Turner makes $18.5, but he's only got 1 year left.
An arbitration? Is he in arbitration?
Yeah.
Okay.
They have Cody Bellinger, who's also in arbitration, and is going to get a whole bunch of money. So they're going to have to pay him. So I don't think.
Or they cut him.
Do you think they cut?
He's been playing terrible.
But do you think they cut him?
No,
I don't
honestly,
think they cut him.
But
for
like,
what?
I'm thinking in terms of if they were trying to go get Soto, what would the moves they would have to be?
What about
making.
the other Los Angeles team? And my curiosity is there a world where you can do a Mike Trout for Juan Soto type trade?
No.
That would be so gross.
No.
Now you're just getting crazy, Dennis.
I like getting crazy.
I know.
Bellinger's an interesting case because I don't know what happened to him.
He played very bad last season.
Yeah, but
His fall off
why?
after his 2 years ago.
2019.
Yeah, has been dramatic.
No, I mean, listen, that year seems the most like the outlier.
Well, he batted 170 last year, right?
He batted 165.
Yeah, that's not good.
But yeah, I mean, you look at his first 2 years in the league, he was 260s.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's a career 257 hitter. The 2019 year seems like the outlier where he batted 305.
He's also been hurt a lot.
That's
Yeah.
my question.
Yeah.
Something last year was wrong with him that hasn't fully come out. So let's go separate from that. The Dodgers could theoretically do it, but the Dodgers would have to do a whole bunch of finagling now to get themselves to that point, right? So you really come down to the last people. He wants the Mets.
The Mets are basically, just on this conversation, are probably the only viable option.
And the Mets signed Kana for 2 years to go after him.
And what's Scherzer? 3 years?
2 years.
2 years?
2 years.
Cool.
The Mets, how many years left does Cano have?
2.
Yeah.
The Mets are set up for 2 years from now to go wild. So who and what and where and why and when and how are they lining up for? That's the big question to me. And it points to me of this money getting turned down, him making all the comments about wanting to be in New York and the Big Apple and there not being any place like it.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Lindor's there and has shown that he pulls in the Spanish player, right? Correa's contemplated it. Harvey actually came, right? The Mets organization from that side, like, has moved in that direction. You're going to have Francisco Alvarez coming up soon. The where you are in Queens and what that is for Puerto Rican culture, Dominican culture, like that world. Juan Soto's coming to the Mets. It feels like. But this also feels like when it felt like LeBron was coming to the Knicks and then said he was going to come to the Knicks and then had a last-second change of heart and went to Miami.
And didn't KD say he was coming to the Knicks?
No.
Too? No, that was just...
No. KD was going to come, and then they said they didn't want to pay him all that money. Which has made sense.
Sure.
Everything that the Nets did didn't work out.
Yeah.
They haven't won. They're not winning this year. They beat the Knicks last night in a horrible
Traded
beat.
for Harden and
then had to get rid of Harden.
they brought in Ben Simmons.
Kyrie can't play because he's still on the flat earth. Like, everything is, and that should have, like, it is what it is. So, like, when I look at it, I think Soto, so the question is, if Soto demands the trade, how many people are positioned right now to just pull the trigger and do it? Not many.
Well, okay. Well, here's a question: is there a team that's in win now mode but doesn't want to pay him the money, so they just trade for him for 2 years?
I don't think that there's any team that could give them what they want and make it worth it for 2 years.
Right.
Like, he would want to go somewhere that gives him the bag.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And, like, to me, the Mets would look at him and be like, cool, we're going to sign you. We'll buy out your other years.
And we're going to sign
and
you
we'll
forever.
sign you for 10 years, $500 million. Or 10 years, $460 million. Still the biggest contract in history.
How old is he?
24.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because
it doesn't need to be 13 years. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I'd rather just pay you more money every year. Yeah, we're luxury tax. Don't care. 2 years from now, Mets are out of luxury tax. Kana's gone.
He's only 23. He just turned 23 in October.
Dope. Even better.
Pull the trigger.
Dope.
Pull the trigger. Pull it.
I'm so glad that came out too. It made me feel like so much better about the conversation we've had about that because we're so right.
Yep.
So right. Well, whenever baseball returns,
we'll have things to actually talk about.
Yeah. It's good. Honestly, should they get this figured out in a reasonable amount of time?
No shot.
Super unlikely. But whenever it does come back, the whole, now that I think about it, I don't even know if the free agency thing will be crazy because I have no idea when they're coming back.
Yep.
I have no idea what the free agency world's going to look like when that happens. Because if they delay this till, God forbid, like July, are people just going to sign super safe deals and then just be like, all right, cool, I'll be a free agent?
Everybody's going to sign 1 year
Right,
deals.
it's going to be...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then coming out of it. So, but here's the thing, right? All of the deals that were signed before this, the first year of the deal would just then be a prorated portion of the deal. But it would still count as a year.
Yep.
So the Kana deal that's a 2-year deal would be 1 year with most
Robbie
of it
Cano
gone.
Robbie
Cano, you'd have a percentage of your deal gone.
Down.
Right?
Yep.
You'd have 1 year left. The Mets are buying him out next year.
Please do it. Need it.
Unless he hits like a god again in the shortened year that they're about to have.
Yeah. When do you think over under for when we start?
Oh, geez, Louise. Now that there's like venom getting thrown and they're both going to start looking ugly soon.
They're playing chicken, yeah.
They're both going to get to the point that they get so much negative about them. What's the next pro league that has like a thing coming up?
So my initial thought was, do they play before the end of the NBA and NHL season?
When does that season end?
June-ish?
June? Yeah.
But that's including the playoffs.
Yes.
Right.
That's,
So you're
playoffs
saying
are done. I'm saying, is there going to be a break?
The end of Stanley
like,
Cup goes forever, right?
Right, but is there going to be a break between the end of Stanley Cup and NBA Finals to the start of training camp?
I'm going to say a deal. I'm going to say a deal is completed sometime around May 1.
Because that's a huge time for the MLB. Is there's all eyes on them for the most part.
When do we start in 2020?
In June or July.
June, July? Okay. So
Because they played July.
we're playing
August.
an 80-game season? 82
Yeah,
game
we
season?
talked about it. I think half. I think they end up with half this year.
I hate that so much, but great. Cool. We'll see. So May 1?
Our arms are going to do great in a shortened season.
Facts. Bro, we are getting rings this year, baby.
Scherzer only gets 20 million of his
Excellent.
46.
Excellent.
All right, guys. Appreciate you guys listening to us. As always, we'll see you next time.
Later.
Baseball lifestyle, it's my lifestyle.